Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this English news edition brought to you live from Dzair News Studios. Let's have a look at today's top stories. ADL1 pre-delivery phase scheduled to start by January 2016 according to the statements of Housing Minister Abdelmajid Tebboune. The EU-Africa Summit on the migration issue wrapped up in Malta with the participation of Prime Minister Abdelmalek Salal. According to the EU Commission, products coming from factories in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza and the Golden Heights will be labeled as settlement products. Those were today's top stories. Welcome again. A good piece of news for all the ADL1 housing unit subscribers. The apartment's pre-delivery decisions will be delivered by the beginning of the upcoming year, according to the confirmation of Housing Minister Abdelmajid Tebboune. After a 15-year-old long waiting period, subscribers are getting one step closer to receiving their new apartments, and the concerned ministry can now move on to the second batch of its ADL housing program. Lamia Shouch has the details in the following report.
Finally, and after much back and forth about the delivery of the first batch of the AADL housing units, Minister of Housing Abdelmajid Tebboune has set the record straight by revealing that the delivery of the apartment's pre-decisions will start by January 2016 in a bid by the ministry to move to the files of the second batch of the program.
We have promised that in December we would be done with the location choices, and we will directly move on late December or early January 2016 to the pre-delivery of the apartment for the 2001 and 2002 subscribers. Then we will deal with the 2013 files.
Concerning the freezing of the rural housing units requests in more than 13 provinces, Minister Tebboune says his ministry is by no means responsible, putting all the blame on local governors.
The Ministry of Housing did not issue any order to freeze rural housing. But I have read in some newspapers that governors in some provinces may have received letters or testimonies of citizens stipulating that those who benefited from rural housing and let them go may have been frozen.
The AADL file that has been pending for more than 15 years is finally getting closer to being solved, much to the delight of the applicants who have been waiting patiently for their apartments, and to the relief of the ministry, which has been under a lot of pressure to finalize it, to be able to move on to its newer housing formulas.
Prime Minister Abdelmalek Salal, who represented the President of the Republic at the EU-Africa Summit on migration issue on Wednesday and Thursday in Malta. The summit, which focused on the challenges and opportunity that the international migration represents, brought together the member states of the existing cooperation process between Europe and Africa, the representatives of the African Union Commission and the Commission of the Economic Community of West African States, the United Nations and the International Organization for Migrations. To this effect, Prime Minister Abdelmalek Salal underlined the causes of the current migratory movement, particularly in political instability, armed conflicts, terrorism, and its active connection with transitional crime, as well as extreme poverty in some regions of the African continent, calling on the international community to actively support the process of peace in Mali, as well as the efforts of the states which fight against terrorist groups in the Sahel, as well as the Horns of Africa. Moving on to another story now, and in international cooperation file. The Spanish ambassador to Algeria, Mr. Alejandro Palenco, said that the number of Spanish enterprises in Algeria has increased by 70% and that several Spanish multi-million-dollar projects are underway in Algeria. Let's take a listen.
There
is an increasing presence of Spanish enterprises in Algeria. The latest data we have is 270, which is a very important increase since 2010. We have increased our presence by 70%. There is an important effort by Algerian authorities to try and boost the business climate. Of course, it's still a difficult process, but we see important efforts, and I am sure that positive results would be imminently seen. Flights between Algeria and Spain are full. There are more than 5 flights per day, and they are full of businessmen, either Algerian going to Spain or the other way round. This means that opportunities are here.
Maintenant, il y a un projet. Aujourd'hui, il y avait une inauguration à Oran.
Today, there is a project in Oran province for 2 Catalan groups, a big project for Roca, the Spanish firm. Fertial is planning a €300 million investment in the upcoming years in its factories in Annaba and Oran.
Millions d'euros pour les prochaines années dans ces usines à Annaba et Oran.
Still with the cooperation track, a memorandum of understanding on the creation of an Algerian-Chinese joint venture specializing in manufacturing trains, metro and trams was signed by the Ministers of Transport, Industry and Mines, Mr. Talai and Bouchouar respectively, as well as Mr. Han Guanji, head of the Chinese company Norenco. More details with Karim Faz-Zakri in the following report.
After the Swiss partnership, a contract agreement was signed in Algiers by the Ministries of Transport and Industry and Mines with a Chinese public company in Algeria for the creation of a joint venture specializing in the manufacturing of train sets of metro and tram. The signing ceremony saw also the presence of the SNVI and SNTF CEOs and the Chinese ambassador to Algeria. Our ambition along with our Chinese partners is to enter a gradual local, and we had no other than the Chinese Norenco to do this project. This project is part of Foreign Direct Investment (FDI) and aims at the creation of a large industrial manufacturing complex of ores in Algeria, whose capacities could even be destined for export to the African market. As for the choice of Norenco as a partner, it came after a study on the well-conduct of the company in addition to its possession of modern technology. China is currently investing in many countries, and our relations with China are good. China possesses good modern technology with international standards, and that's why we chose this Chinese partner. As long as we're talking about technology transfer, this means there's going to be a training of Algerian cadres and workers in Algerian companies. Seeing the economic difficulties of the country, the signing of such investment project stresses the confidence of the Chinese partner in Algeria, which the ambassador of China praised as full of economic potentials. Many other projects will be signed, covering human resources training and technology transfer. I will try in future cooperation in the field of railway transport in the country, put more stress on human resources training and technology transfer. We're ready to raise the level of trade and economic exchanges. The company will be created as part of partnership between the National Railway Company SNTF, the company Algiers Metro, and Economic Manufacturing Company for Railway Equipment. This is considered a solemn and historic partnership project which will complement and strengthen the industrial base established by the Algerian government.
Moving on to another matter now. After the Algerian glorious revolution of our country, many roads have carried the names of revolutionary historic foreign figures. All those patriots have fought for freedoms for their countries. Soon after Algeria took independence, they came in to congratulate Algeria on triumphing over France. That and much more in Siham Saro's report.
After the Algerian glorious revolution that granted the independence of our country, many roads have carried the name of revolutionary historic foreign personalities who came to Algeria in order to support and congratulate its population upon winning the independence. But rare are people who know the story behind the name. Our cameras spotted such streets.
Kennedy Place has been named after the independence, but you see what it is like today. It has become shuttered, nobody cares about its roads and environment. I was born here and I perfectly know this area. Mrs. Kennedy loved Algeria and the Algerian people. She named this boulevard after the independence, because as I know, she used to come here quite often in 1963.
John Fitzgerald Jack Kennedy came to Algeria in 1962, supporting and congratulating the Algerian population for obtaining the glorious revolution. JFK was born on November the 22nd, 1917, and was assassinated on November the 22nd, 1963. He was an American politician who served the 35th President of the United States from January 1961 until his assassination. Ernesto Che Guevara Boulevard, commonly known as a Che. He was an Argentinian Marxist revolutionary and military leader, a major figure of the Cuban Revolution. He was a popular diplomatic guest of Algeria because he was supporting the Algerian regime led by late President Houari Boumediene. His last visit was paid to Algeria in 1963, 1 year after the Algerian Revolution. He was born in 1929 and died in 1967.
In the past, this district was called the Republican Boulevard, but since 1962 the name got attributed to the Cuban revolutionist Che Guevara, because he used to come with Fidel Castro.
Amilcar Cabral Boulevard is another historic place that carries the name of its historical figure. Came to Algeria in 1963 in support of freedom.
I know it's a marine boulevard, but I don't know this personality.
Amilcar Lopez da Costa Cabral was a Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verdean and politician nationalist leader. He was also one of the Africa's foremost anti-colonial leaders. He was born on the 12th of September 1924 and was assassinated on 20th of January 1973. Algeria has always been the refugee place for revolutionary figures who supported our anti-colonial struggle. And although most of these streets were renamed after the independence, they are still commonly known by these historical figures' names, each carrying a different story of friendship.
Moving on to our international news, and in a stinging slam to Israel, the European Union insisted this week that some goods produced on land illegally seized in the 1967 war must be labelled made in settlements, a mandate that added to Israel's deep unease over a growing international boycott. Nadia Qasmi has the details.
The European Union has approved new rules for the labelling of products made in Israeli settlements on occupied Palestinian land. Brussels said the move is technical, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded by saying the EU should be ashamed of the decision, while another minister claimed it is disguised as anti-Semitism. Drawn up over the 3 years by the European Commission, the EU's executive branch, the guidelines mean Israel producers must be explicitly labeled farm goods and cosmetics that come from settlements when they are sold in the European Union. The occupied territory is not part of Israel, so goods cannot be sold as made in Israel. The EU does not recognize Israel's occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights, lands it captured in the 1967 Middle East War. It said the labeling policy aims to distinguish between goods made inside the internationally accepted borders of Israel and those outside. The new guidelines state that since the Golan Heights and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are not part of the Israeli territory, according to international law, the indication product from Israel is considered to be incorrect and misleading. If an Israeli company refuses to apply the label, a retail outlet has the authority to do so, as the European Commission has sufficient information about where goods come from. The Palestine Liberation Organization's Negotiations Affairs Department said on Twitter, EU labeling of settlement products is a step in the right direction, but insufficient. A second Commission source said the guidelines were requested by EU governments who sought clarity on existing EU labelling rules and that the 5-page document of some 12 paragraphs did not constitute new legislation. Since 2004, Israeli settlement products have not benefited from trade preferences to the European Union, while for all countries, the EU has agricultural legislation that requires labeling of the origin of fruit, vegetables and honey. Israel's economy ministry estimates the impact will be about $71 million a year, affecting fresh products such as grapes and dates, wine, poultry, honey, olive oil and cosmetics.
Still in the Middle East, Kurdish fighters launched an assault Thursday aiming to retake the ISIS-held strategic town of Sinjar. ISIS overran Sinjar last year in an onslaught that caused the flight of tens of thousands of Yazidis and first prompted the US to launch airstrikes against the insurgents. The statement from the Kurdish Regional Security Council said some 7,500 Peshmerga fighters were closing in on the mountain town from 3 fronts. It added that Operation Free Sinjar is aimed at establishing a significant buffer zone to protect the city and its inhabitants from incoming artillery. Peshmerga fighters and ISIS insurgents exchanged heavy gunfires early Thursday as Kurdish fighters began their approach amid heavy aerial bombardment. Lebanon's parliament convened on Thursday for its first legislative session in more than a year to pass financial law. Lawmakers are due to discuss development loans, debt insurance, and banks at a 2-day session. Thorny political issues have been left off the agenda. Lebanon's main political blocs had previously been unable to agree on an agenda for the session, obstructing efforts to convene the chamber. Some parties were still threatening to boycott until late on Wednesday. The political deadlock means Lebanon risks missing out on World Bank loans that Parliament needs to approve by year-end. The session is the first since Parliament extended its own term in November last year. The country's politicians, bitterly divided by their own rivalries and wider conflict in the region, have failed to agree on even basic decisions, including where to dump rubbish. Sweden is imposing temporary border controls to stem a record inflow of refugees as the Nordic nation pleads with the rest of Europe to help deal with the biggest migration wave seen in the region since World War II. The government of Prime Minister Stefan Löfven put controls in place by noon on Thursday, targeting key crossings such as the Øresund Bridge from Denmark. According to Home Affairs Minister Andres Eman, the checks will initially last 10 days and can be extended for 20 days at a time, in line with European Union rules. Ferry operators will also be asked to carry out identity checks and the setup of a passenger list. And finally, as part of the cultural and artistic program of the Algerian Culture Ministry for the year 2015, and according to the mutual agreement between the latter and NSD Events and Consulting Company, a third edition of Miss Algeria Beauty Queen Paint is launched in coordination with the jury panel of the contest under the leadership of Faisal Hamdad, the owner of the organization Copyrights. More details with Karim Faz-Zakri.
According to its organizers, said it wasn't just about physical appearance, but rather about the gracious education as well.
Alors المرحلة الأولى اللي درناها سي المرحلة تاع لي كاستينغ سكون ابل لي كاستينغ دونك
We're done with the costing phase, which we toured for in different states of the country so as to see why they want to participate and whether they are aware of the message of the pageant. Then now we are working on the training phase. The candidates are going to be coached by specialized teachers who are giving them their best, so as these candidates would find a way to give this contest their all and the best image of themselves. The event is going to be held in Constantine as it is the capital of Arab culture for the year 2015. The slogan of this edition, All Against Breast Cancer, is accompanying the winner in all the activities to come around the world. We're giving this edition 3 dimensions. First one is health. Miss Algeria has the theme of All Against Breast Cancer. It will be her duty to carry around along all the activities she does, raising awareness, visiting hospitals and orphanage, nursing homes, cancer patients. We also have a cultural dimension. This is going to be shown on the prime through the traditional dresses, the makeup, hairdressing. Even when Miss Algeria is traveling, she'll be taking her traditional dresses along. Miss Algeria isn't just a top model with an amazing body, but she's also a messenger of the country with good background knowledge of current issues facing the world. She has an important message to get across representing Algerian women.
Those were today's top stories. Let's have a look again at today's top stories. ADL1 pre-delivery phase scheduled to start by January 2016, according to the statements of Housing Minister Abdelmajid Tebboune. The EU-Africa Summit on the migration issue wrapped up in Malta with the participation of Prime Minister Abdelmalik Saleh. According to the EU Commission, products coming from the factories in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza and the Golden Heights will be labeled as settlement products. That was the end of our news in English. Thank you for watching and goodbye.